Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, shoeshiners, serfs, peasants. I am a useful idiot, and I would like to talk about false flag incidents, and specifically why people are so skeptical of false flag incidents and whether their government lies to them. Because when you connect those two issues, my question becomes far more apparent of what the answer is. So let's go over a little bit of history first. We'll focus on United States history because that's relevant to us as Americans. So you have the Spanish-American War, where we declared war on Spain in 1898 and appropriated all their colonies overseas and launched America into the age of imperialism. And a contrived event where the American battleship, the Maine, exploded in Havana Harbor, which was under Spanish control at the time. We've since found out, of course, that it was a boiler explosion, which may or may not have been sabotaged. And that incident was used for us to launch this war against Spain. So there's a false flag event that was proven to be true and manipulated by the government. Soon after that, in World War I, we entered the war in 1917. Wilson had won on a ticket of not entering the war. Americans had no taste for participating in the European war. We entered the war on the sinking of an American ship, the Lusitania. In a reading of actual history, what you'll find that German newspapers, German government took out ads in American newspapers explaining that certain areas were subject to submarine warfare if American ships should go into certain waters. So, these warnings were put up before the Lusitania went sailing. The Lusitania was sunk off the coast of Ireland after doing an erratic course. And of course, as it turns out later, we find out that the ship was indeed illegal and was carrying munitions as the Germans claimed. So another false flag incident used to instigate a foreign policy. So then it brings us to World War II. Now, of course, we know that Pearl Harbor was not a false flag incident. However, part of actual history tells us that President Roosevelt put an oil embargo on Japan, which ostensibly is an act of war. We had no grievances with Japan directly threatening our national security. And there are stories and rumors about how much we didn't know before Japan struck in Pearl Harbor. That's a topic for another video. Let's move on to Vietnam. Vietnam was also started on a false flag incident, the Tonkin Gulf in 1964. LBJ tapes have since realized that indeed they will acknowledge that the Tonkin Gulf was fabricated to get us into the war and perpetrate that foreign policy. Ostensibly, the North Vietnamese fired on an American ship in the Tonkin Gulf, and of course this didn't happen. So there's another false flag incident. In modern times, of course, we have 9/11. To discuss the veracity of what actually happened on 9/11 and who's responsible, that's a topic for another time. Suffice to say that the event was used to perpetrate a vast foreign policy, including the Patriot Act, a surveillance society, a police state, suspension of civil liberties, checkpoints, and the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq, as well as other foreign policy decisions in the Middle East. So, now we have the drums of war being beat about Iran, and exactly the same mechanisms that we saw used previous to the invasion of Iraq are showing up again, easily found out to be misleading at best with a little investigation. So anyway, we potentially have another false flag event coming up. Probably an American ship being fired on in the Gulf of Hormuz. Strait of Hormuz, pardon me. So, part of my bottom line in this video is to keep your eyes open for a false flag event involving Iran. I would suggest that it will be an American ship being fired on in the Strait of Hormuz. So, and then my other bottom line is, with this history of false flag events, both here in America and worldwide, throughout history, Americans need to keep their minds a little more open about this idea, because I find it very surprising that American citizens can find out that their government lies to them daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, by decade, about almost anything. I think all American citizens can agree that our government lies to us constantly. Our leaders lie to us constantly. So, my point being, why do you think they lie to you all the time, but when it comes to starting a war, you assume they're telling you the truth?